Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and welcome back to my channel. As an active open source contributor, I get GitHub Copilot for free. So I have been using it for past few months for both my development as well as DevOps related activities. One thing that I found is there are so many videos, articles that talk about GitHub Copilot from a developer point of view, how GitHub Copilot can make developer 2x, 3x productivity. But what about DevOps Engineer? So as I mentioned, I have been using GitHub Copilot from a DevOps Engineer point of view as well. So in this video, I would like to explain, or I would like to mostly talk about my personal experience of using GitHub Copilot from a DevOps Engineer point of view. What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? And most importantly, is it worth taking a paid GitHub Copilot subscription if you are a DevOps engineer? This is going to be very interesting because I'm going to cover multiple aspects so that you will understand if it is worth taking GitHub Copilot subscription. So please watch this video till the end. First things first, if you are new to GitHub Copilot or if you are not aware what exactly it is. So GitHub Copilot is a AI developer tool. Some people also call it as virtual coding assistant. But personally, I would like to call GitHub Copilot as a peer programmer, something that sits next to you, helps you write better code. It can be a colleague or it can be a coding assistant. I would like to use GitHub Copilot mostly like a peer programmer. I will come back to that. What do I mean by a peer programmer? But what exactly is a virtual coding assistant? So ChatGPT is an example of virtual coding assistant. If you go to ChatGPT and if you simply ask ChatGPT to write a Terraform script to install EC2 instance, so it will give you the code. It will also explain you the code. This is typically a virtual coding assistant. In terms of GitHub Copilot, why is it better? One, you can integrate GitHub Copilot with your IDE. In my case, I'm using Visual Studio Code. So I can simply install GitHub Copilot. So you need to install the plugin. Of course, before that, you need to buy a subscription. I'll show that towards the end of this video. Let's say you already bought the GitHub Copilot subscription, or if you are an active open source contributor, you don't need to buy the subscription. You just give your GitHub ID and you get the subscription for free. Let's say you have the subscription, then you just go to your extension section of the Visual Studio Code, search for Copilot, right? So you get that GitHub Copilot extension. This is the one. So just go with the blue tick one, github.com, and just click on the install button. And once you install, to the bottom of your screen, of course, once you install, you need to sign into your GitHub account. And then to your bottom of your screen, you will see this particular option, which is GitHub Copilot. So you can use it in two ways. One is you can just click on the chat section as I've shown, and you can start asking it questions. For example, I can just come here in the chat section and I can ask, let's say the same thing, write Terraform script to install EC2. And you will see it. So it's writing the script for me, which is very similar to ChatGPT. So that's why I said I don't want to use GitHub Copilot as a virtual coding assistant. Rather, I would like to use it as a peer programmer. Now, what does that mean? Let me show you the demo. So as a DevOps engineer, what can be your day-to-day tasks from scripting or writing code point of view? I would like to say three things. One, you might be writing IaC. infrastructure as code, which is one of your primary activities. Second, you might be writing some scripts such as shell script, Python script to automate some stuff. Third, if you are also doing some development activity such as writing a Kubernetes controller, writing a Kubernetes operator, or writing some serverless functions, these are the three use cases where DevOps engineers mostly deal with scripting or programming. Let's take a look at all the three options. And like I mentioned, I'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages. So I'm not going to use this option, which is like more of like a virtual coding assistant, because I can also use ChatGPT for this. Rather, let's take a workspace, right? And I've created a folder called Terraform. There is nothing in it. Now, what I'm going to do is let's deal with the IaC part. As a DevOps engineer, I'm given a simple task to set up VPC, and the task is to use a Terraform for that. Let's say I know Terraform, but I'm not so expert in Terraform. What I can do with GitHub Copilot, if I already have it, just come here, make sure you provide the right extension. Of course, you have to provide the right extension, but it is other way of explaining GitHub Copilot that you are writing a Terraform file. And another important thing is make sure you provide the file name which explains GitHub Copilot. It's also an industry standard that you provide the right file name, but the coding assistant or a prior programmer will only understand once you start using the right file naming convention, right extensions, right packages name. Now, let me start writing. Okay, I'm not an expert in Terraform, let's say, and I just know that the first thing that I have to start with is a provider. Let's say I'll say provider is AWS. Now, GitHub Copilot understood that, okay, you are writing a Terraform file and you want to create VPC. You have provided the provider is AWS. Now it will start helping you out. So as you have seen, it has suggested me the first block that you need to write is region. You can either accept or you can move to the next option here, such as region. But yeah, obviously, I need this one. So I'll just go with it. The second option was suggesting me to use a variable, but I'm okay with this. Then just click on enter. GitHub Copilot is thinking about the next action. And it said that probably you need AWS credentials because your Terraform has to talk to AWS. And it explains that there are three ways to deal with it. You can either use a shared credential file, or you can go with shared credentials with a different syntax, or you can directly provide your access key. For example, let's say I want to go with it. Then you say, GitHub Copilot says that, okay, you have used access key, now you need a secret key. So this is how you authenticate your provider with AWS. I'm not writing any code, but why I'm preferring this option rather than going with, let's say ChatGPT or something, because here I'm verifying each and every line while I'm writing the Terraform script itself. I have some Terraform knowledge and GitHub Copilot is also helping me. So it's like a combination of my knowledge and a peer programmer who is trying to help me. Understand carefully. This is the best way, probably, or at least the best way I figured out to use GitHub Copilot rather than going with or asking it complete question, give me the Terraform VPC file. It will throw out a lot of errors and you will end up wasting a lot of time. If you are doing the peer programming style, you will also learn things better. You can also review while you are writing code, and it can also help you in the better way because you get the suggestions, right? If you don't want to use access key, you want to use a shared credential, you can immediately change that option while writing the code itself. Now, what is the next thing? So it says that if you want version, you can also get version. Let's say I don't want it, and I'll just click enter and I'll wait for GitHub Copilot to think. Now it said the next thing that you might need is this particular block called AWS VPC, and it stopped the instructions here because it wants you to manually enter the CIDR block. Let's say I'll enter that later. So I'll just close the close the parenthesis and not parenthesis, sorry. I'll close this and then I'll just click on the enter. So it said enable DNS support. Do you think you need it? Then just wait for it. So it said, okay, you need to provide some tags, right? And then, yeah, I think I'm done with the VPC block. Now just click on the enter and see the magic. It will also suggest you not just the VPC block. Your file name is vpc.tf, but it will provide you even the internal components of VPC, such as now it helped me with the subnet. Now just click on the enter. Now it helped me with the internet gateway. While I am writing this code, I will also verify each and every block while it is writing. So again, just close this, click on the enter, GitHub gateway ID if you need. So if you need something, use it. Or if you don't need, you can immediately say, like, I don't need the tag section, let's say. So I don't have to use it. The advantage, major advantage that I see is I'm writing the code not by using a virtual coding assistant, but rather with a peer. It can be my colleague or a peer AI programmer. In this case, it's a peer AI programmer. So you can see literally it gives you all the things that is required. It gave you the route table. Then let me just close it. And now the AWS security group part is also done. Egress. Now, once the egress is done, it will also suggest you tags. So literally, I can improve my IaC part maybe like 3x, 4x times. But you need to know, I'm not saying to blindly jump into GitHub Copilot. I'm also going to talk about the disadvantages. There are equal number of disadvantages. So please wait for that part. For all the three aspects, for the IaC, I'm going to cover advantages and disadvantages. For the scripting part, I'm going to cover advantages and disadvantages. For the development part of a DevOps engineer also, I'm going to cover advantages and disadvantages. Perfect. Now, if you keep continuing, it will keep giving you the code. Now it is also asking you, do you need an EC2 instance? See, you are only asking for VPC. It completed the VPC part. Then it is assuming that, okay, maybe you want to install EC2 instance within the VPC that is created. And then it is assuming maybe you need a key pair. Endless. Now it is going for another EC2 instance. So this is how you use GitHub Copilot if you are doing the IaC activity, that is infrastructure as code. Now, a lot of DevOps engineers have infrastructure as code as their primary responsibility. We saw the advantages. Now let's talk about the disadvantages. Like I've mentioned, there are equal number of disadvantages. One is with GitHub Copilot, the data that it has is only till 2021 September. So, or 2022 December, September, I don't remember exactly, but it is like almost 2 to 3 years old. So the problem is that IaC is a constantly evolving space. In AWS, you might have a new resource, or in AWS, frequently there are some API changes, there can be some syntax changes. So if you are not good with IaC, and if you are only trusting GitHub Copilot, then you will end up wasting a lot of time for the new resources. For the things like VPC, EC2 instance, or S3 bucket, common AWS resources, GitHub Copilot works very, very well. For that things, you don't have to go for any other option. I think this is the best thing that you can use. But if you are going for any new resources, or if you are going for little complex use cases, then you also need to have knowledge of IaC. Only then GitHub Copilot will be a good match for you. Now, this is about the infrastructure as code point of view. Abhishek, what about scripting? So let's also take a look at that. Let me delete this folder because I don't want to confuse GitHub Copilot. The reason why I'm saying I don't want to confuse it is because understand how it works. One is it will take a look at all the files, specifically the files that are open. It will try to read those files. It will understand what exactly you are writing, with which it will try to give you some auto suggestions. So make sure you have the appropriate folders open. Otherwise, it will get confused. Now, let's say I want to write a shell script, and the shell script is also, let me say, to install EC2 instance, EC2 instance AWS CLI.sh. Okay, now I said that I want to write a EC2 instance using the AWS CLI. Sorry, it should be a file, not a folder. My bad. Let me just remove this. So I can just create a file here directly. EC2 instance using the AWS CLI.sh. Now let me provide bin bash. Okay. And what I'm going to do is just wait for the Copilot. This script will create an EC2 instance using AWS CLI. It also gave you a comment suggestion. So it is asking you that how about declaring some variables? I'll declare the variables. So all the things that are required for you, if you're not aware what exactly I'm typing on the keyboard, I'm not typing anything. Once I get the code suggestion, all that I'm doing, like I got a code suggestion here, I'm just pressing on the tab. That's it. So see, it gave you the complete code for the EC2 instance. End of the script. How about GitHub Copilot from scripting point of view? Whether it is shell scripting or it's Python, I would like to say it is far better from IaC point of view, because shell scripting and Python are relatively way more mature. The amount of data, end of the day, GitHub Copilot also use the open AI LLM models. So it all depends on data. For shell scripting and Python scripting, there is good amount of data. So the accuracy of your script is relatively high compared to IaC. So if you are a DevOps engineer and if your primary activity is shell scripting or Python scripting, I'll give you a big thumbs up. You can go with GitHub Copilot. It will help you a lot and it will improve your efficiency significantly. Best example, I've written this shell script in maybe like 10-15 seconds, right? I did not have to use, of course, you might say that Abhishek, I can also do this with ChatGPT. Definitely you can do it. But if you start doing it with ChatGPT, the thing is your skills of prompt engineering will improve. But with GitHub Copilot, your skills of doing the peer programming or your skills of understanding the script, reading the script, and writing the script will improve. Please understand, this is not a paid promotion. I'm not doing any paid promotion for GitHub Copilot in this video, but I'm only trying to cover the advantages and disadvantages because I've been using it. Perfect. So this is from shell scripting point of view. Now, the final thing is some DevOps engineers or mostly SRE engineers, they spend a lot of time on building Kubernetes controllers, writing the serverless functions, maybe writing the metric servers for monitoring, more like activities that I do where, I use a lot of Golang programming because I write Kubernetes controllers, I deal with Kubernetes operators, right? So on a day-to-day basis, I use a lot of Golang and Python programming. So how about GitHub Copilot from that perspective? Now, let me also close this. From coding point of view, specifically from a DevOps engineer point of view, I'm going to share some useful tips. So one is, let me take a new window, right? Let me open an existing project that I am already doing. So open, let me search for Argo CD operator, let's say. So I'm just using a GitHub project, which I'm contributing to, so that it would be much easy for you to understand. So let's say this is an project that I'm using. And within this project, let me show you how GitHub Copilot can improve my efficiency. So here, there are all the Go files. It can be any project. There is no recommendation. You can use a Python project. You can use any of your existing Go project. Now, let's say my task is to write a uh, a reconciler. If you don't understand this terminology, you can ignore that. But what I'm trying to say is, let's say you want to write a Kubernetes reconciler for an existing controller, or you want to write some Go script. What you need to do is open a similar file. Okay, understand it carefully. Open a similar file to what you are writing. Sometimes you might have to write things right from the sketch, or sometimes you are asked to write things which are similar to what already exist in your code base. If the things that you are writing, similar things already exist in your code base, then the accuracy of GitHub Copilot goes high. Abhishek, can you give an example? For sure. Let's say you are writing GitHub Copilot. Sorry, you are writing a program for a calculator function, where you have a calculator application, and in the calculator application, there is already subtraction, there is already addition, and your task is to write multiplication. So what I would recommend is open the addition file, open the subtraction file, and or the functions, and then when you start writing the multiplication, the GitHub Copilot can give you more suggestions. In this case, there are so many Go files, right? If I want to write a reconciler, which is new but similar implementation exists in my project, so open that similar file and go to the folder where you want to create it. Provide the right naming convention. Let's say I want to write a admission controller. So simply say admission underscore controller dot go. It's okay if you don't understand what exactly I'm writing, but I just want to show you I have opened a similar file. Now let me just type package. It will start giving you the suggestions. Import blocks are nothing but the libraries or the modules that you are going to use within your reconciler. It will try to understand from the previous files that you have opened. So that's why it's important to open the files that are similar to what you write. Otherwise, also it will give you the suggestion depending upon the package and the file name, but this is much better. Perfect. So it is giving me some suggestions. Let's say I close the import block, and if I proceed with writing the script, okay, it still has some import statements that it wants me to import. That's why. Perfect. Now, sorry, it still has some import block. Makes sense. It is still importing the Kubernetes related packages, which is required for my Kubernetes reconciler that I'm going to write. Yeah, just bear with it. Then I'm going to show you how it is going to help you a lot in writing the code. Just let this import statements complete. Perfect. Now see what is going to do. It gave me this line, blank assignment to verify that reconciler Argo CD implements this. Where did it understand this from? If you go to the previous file that you have opened, it started understanding the file that you have opened. Meanwhile, it is giving suggestions. It also understood that there is something called Argo CD controller. It took a look at how did you write the Argo CD controller, and according to that, it starts suggesting the admission controller. So it read a previous controller implementation in your code. It understood the previous controller implementation, and for your new implementation, it is suggesting very similar to how you are writing your previous functions. Now, why is this useful? If you go to ChatGPT, of course, it is going to give you the code as well, but that code might not look similar to your previous implementation. So if you are joining a new team and if you are learning the Go programming, probably you can use ChatGPT, you can write the code as well, but it will look very different from other developers in your team, how they are writing the code. Now, if you follow these simple tips, it will be easy to get along with your existing project, and it's easy for the other developers to review your code, and there is a how do I call it, there is a synchronization in your code basically. Perfect. So this way it is going to write the complete controller for me. Of course, I need to have the Golang programming skills, because ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot, they have information only till 2021 September, which is outdated code. So if you are writing programming also, you have to be careful that it does not use security issues related code, and it does not use outdated libraries. So out of the three use cases from a DevOps engineer point of view, number one, IaC, it's bit of yes and no, because in IaC, it's a continuously evolving space. And because it's a constantly evolving space, IaC activities using GitHub Copilot, you might not get few things. For VPC, EC2 instance, S3 bucket, or Azure Blob, Azure Virtual Machine, AKS, EKS, you might get the code related to that. But for anything new, GitHub Copilot might not work as expected. Second activity, scripting, such as shell scripting or Python, big yes. If that is your primary activity in your company as a DevOps engineer, and if you want a assistant that can help you become 2x, 3x, definitely GitHub Copilot is something that you can go with. Third thing is more of what I do, like writing Kubernetes controllers, operators, like I've shown you. Again, it's bit of yes and no, because if you are a pure developer who is dealing with web applications, writing 3-tier applications, then I would say GitHub Copilot is excellent. But in this case, what happens, again, Go or these controllers, reconcilers, serverless, or operators, this is evolving space where GitHub Copilot either cannot give you use the right modules, or sometimes it use the outdated existing Go modules, which can create some security issues. So use it carefully. Only if you know Go programming or Python programming, then go for it. So this is my experience with GitHub Copilot. Finally, how to install it. I've shown you the plugin and extensions point. It's very simple. If you want to buy the license of it, just take go to your browser, search for GitHub Copilot, your AI pair programmer, and let's say you have the GitHub account, sign in with it. If you don't have, sign up. And once you sign into your GitHub account, now I already have the GitHub Copilot, so you might not see that process of buying the subscription. But if you don't have it, then in the next page, once you log in, you will get options. Do you want to go with individual or do you want to go with enterprise? If you go with individual, it will charge you $10 or $20 per month. If you are enterprise, then there is a different charge. Go with the individual. If you are active open source contributor, you can also get it for free in that option. So this is the video for today. I hope you found it useful. Let me know if you have any questions about GitHub Copilot. I can definitely help you. Put your questions in the comment section. I'll definitely reply to it. Sorry, one final thing before I end this meeting. A big disclaimer: if you want to use GitHub Copilot, make sure when you are using it for your organizational activities, you take the approval, or you be very careful that you don't provide any company related sensitive information, because the information is sent to Microsoft. If you enable an option, there is an option to enable or disable while you buy the subscription. So if you enable that, information is sent to Microsoft, OpenAI, to improve their software. So make sure you use it very wisely. Also, some of the suggestions that are given by GitHub Copilot are taken from existing GitHub projects, and the existing GitHub projects might have some strict licensing. So the code that you have copied from the GitHub Copilot, if it comes from any licensing software, of course, don't worry. When it gives you such suggestions, it is also going to tell you that this piece of code is taken from this GitHub project, and this is the licensing of it. So these are some careful things that you have to make sure before you use it for your organizational activities. So that's the video for today. Thank you so much for watching it. See you all in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.